Hello, students. I'm Shazli from Top Rankers, and I welcome you all to the session around the analysis of PYP for CLAT English section. Well, student, this session is going to be quite interesting as well as fruitful. Why? Because it's going to give you a roadmap for your upcoming preparation along with some strategies. All right, so let's go ahead with the detailed analysis. So I am going to give you analysis of the last 5 years, starting from 2022 to 2026, and I'll begin with the recent one. So let's go ahead with this, students. So in CLAT 2026, we got 6 passages and number of questions were 24. All right. Now you can see, students, as I keep mentioning that literature is the most important genre. You can see here we got 3 passages around literature. So the second passage was around literature, and fourth and fifth passage were also around literature. Now, second is about non-fiction. So this was an extract taken from the famous book, The Sapiens, The History of Mankind, written by Yuval Noah Harari. All right. So this was around literature. First passage was around Indian context. As I keep mentioning, student, that Indian context is the second most important genre. So the first passage is around Indian context. Now let's go ahead with the detailed analysis. So first one was around Indian history. The topic was the non-cooperation movement. The questions which we got there were around facts, fact-based question. That means there were 2 factual questions, 2 vocabulary-based question, and one was around big picture question. That is the main idea of the passage. Second passage was around non-fiction, as I mentioned, Sapiens. The topic was history of mankind. The question types which we got in this passage were inference, vocabulary, factual, again inference, come factual, then logical organization. Got it, students? Now, third passage was around political science, the third wave of democratization and democratic recession. The question types were verbal logic, phrases. Now, this phrases is not exactly the phrasal verb. Here, a part of a sentence conveying some meaning, and you need to identify that conveyed meaning in the given options. All right, so that is around phrases. Now, factual, there were 2 factual questions in third passage. Now, let's go ahead with fourth one. That was around literature. That was around Indian writing in English or short story. Uh, the mysterious fellow passenger was the title of the passage. We got questions around theme, figures of speech. 2 to 3 questions were around vocabulary. That means this passage was a vocabulary dominant passage. Then the last one, student, that was an extract taken from Animal Farm, written by George Orwell. All right. The title of the passage can be Men's Exploitation, and the questions which were asked in this passage were RC tones, figures of speech, vocabulary, and inferential question. Now, CLAT 2025. In CLAT 2025, we got 4 passages with 24 questions. All right. Now you can see, students, first passage was around literature, non-fiction. The topic of the passage can be the 4 motives of writing. The questions which were asked there were around factual. You can see 3 questions were around factual. 1 question was around inference. 1 question was around conditional sentence. If this were the situation, what would it be? All right, what would be the end result? And 1 vocabulary-based question. Now, second and third passage, they were around education. So the title of the passage can be Education and the Understanding of the Child. And so questions which were asked in second passage were around the purpose of writing, that is the primary purpose of the passage. Factual, there were 3 factual questions, 1 inference-based question, and 1 vocabulary-based question. Now, third passage was around education again. The title of the passage can be The True Aim of Education. The questions were more or less like factual. There were 4 questions which were based on facts. There was 1 question around inference and 1 vocabulary-based question. Now, the last one, again, fiction, students. Again, 2 passages were from fiction. So, An Astrologer's Day by R.K. Narayan. That was the title of the passage. The question types which were dominant was there was factual. We can see four questions were around factual, fact based. One question and two questions were around vocabulary. All right. So, what is the common question type? That's what we are going to analyze afterwards. Now, students, CLAT 2024. This was again quite easy with easy LOD, I would say. There were four passages with 24 questions. See, students, again, you can see there were three literary passages and one passage was around legal studies. Again, literature is dominating here. So let's go ahead with this. The first passage was around the interplay between character and setting in literature, that is non-fiction. The question types which were asked there in that passage was they were, sorry, a main idea, central idea, come inference, symbolism, detail-based question or function-based question, vocabulary, RC tones, writing style, and theme. Now, second passage, which was around legal studies, the title of the passage was Justice for the Masses, the Crisis of Access to Justice in India. The question types which were there, main idea, there were two vocabulary based questions, then interpretation questions, author's viewpoint, come inference based question, again author's viewpoint and inference based question, and factual questions. Now, third passage, students, was around fiction. The title of the passage can be The Solitude and Barrenness of Carinano. Now, student, here we can see there were three questions which were around inference. Two factual questions were there and one vocabulary based question was there. Now, the last one, which was around non-fiction again. The title of the passage can be The Evolution and Enduring Legacy of English Literature. There were all the questions which were around fact based. That means all 5 to 6 questions were around factual questions. All right. Now, next, CLAT 2026. The LOD of this passage was moderate. All right. I found lengthy passages in CLAT 2023. Lengthy means all the passages were more than 500 words. All right. So that is one thing which you must notice, that there can be some lengthy passages too. In fact, the entire mock can be, or the actual paper can be lengthy, because here all the passages were more than 500 words. Now, student, here we got 5 passages, just like in CLAT 2026. The common theme and genres were again literature. You can see, student, there were the 2 passages which was they were around literature. The first one, the provincial reader. There were 3 fact-based questions, 1 vocabulary-based question, and 1 sentence meaning. Second was around Indian history. So Kiladi was the topic which was around Indian Indus Valley civilization. A new perspective on ancient India. There was 1 question around assumption. Now, assumption questions are quite common in logical reasoning. But since there are some question types which can be common for both logical reasoning and English, like inference-based question, assumption-based questions, and argument-based questions. All right, so these are the questions which can come in both. Students here, assumption, inference-based, sentence elaboration, conclusion, inference, interpretive or inferential reasoning-based questions. Now, third passage was around contemporary cultural criticism or media studies. The title of the passage can be The Internet and the Loss of Authenticity. There were questions around inference, vocabulary, para-completion, figures of speech, and source of the passage. All right, this is 1 question type, source of the passage, which you must practice, because I think that's 1 common question type which we hardly practice. Now, the 4th passage was around environmental studies, urban studies, which was around Indian context. The title of the passage can be Delhi's water tanker mafia. The question types which were there were inference, vocabulary, main idea, again 2 vocabulary based questions. So overall, from this passage, there were 3 vocabulary based questions. Now, 4th genre was sociology, and the title of the passage was in English and the class divide in India. The question types which were there were two inference based questions, two factual question, and one vocabulary based question. Now, the last one, which was around literature, fiction, Harun and the City of Stories. So there were conditionals and question which was around condition, if situation, hypothetical situation. Then there was a factual question. Then we got one inference and contextual meaning of the sentence based question, and two vocabulary based questions. Now, students, let's go ahead with CLAT 2022. Here we got one passage around psychology, and the overlapping theme can be or genre can be language and communication. The topic of the passage was the power and impact of public speaking. The question types which were there were around main idea, RC tones, primary purpose of the passage, vocabulary, and figures of speech. So overall, it will be vocabulary dominant and two big picture questions. Second passage was around literature, uh, autobiography. Well, the topic of the passage can be technology, bridging distances, creating loneliness. There were questions around fact based, figures of speech, conclusion, inference, and RC tones. Again, student, there was one more passage around literature, biography. So one was autobiography, the other one was biography. The topic of the passage was the glory that came too late. The question types were main idea, factual, RC tones, inference, and vocabulary. Now, student, we got one passage from a very different genre, that is economics. So, cryptocurrency was the topic of the passage, which was around a modern day financial bubble. Now, RC tones, factual questions, figures of speech, writing style, and factual again. Now, next topic is international relations and geopolitics. So the title of the passage is Oil and the Making of Global Power. The question types which were common there were main idea, factual questions, inference, phrase specific question, and then again factual question. The last passage in CLAT 2022 was around philosophy and ethics. So the topic of the passage can be the philosophical roots of animal rights. The common question type was around vocabulary. There were two vocabulary based questions and two fact based questions. One was around positive fact and one was around negative detail based question. We also got one question around inferences. Now, student, you have to notice one thing here, that in CLAT 2022, we got six passages with how many number of questions? There were 30 questions. All right. Even in CLAT 2025, if you see, sorry, 23, there were five passages with 30 questions. All right. That means recently the change which we noticed was around shift in the number of questions. Now we get 24 questions. Earlier we used to get 30 questions. Now we get 4 to 5 passages. Earlier we used to get, like, starting from CLAT 2022, 21 and 20, sorry, CLAT 2020, 21 and 22. We got 30 questions with 6 passages. All right. So I would say, student, the overall LOD has actually come down. This was again of moderate LOD, CLAT 2022. CLAT 2023 was also of moderate LOD, moderate level of difficulty. All right. Now we are expecting that CLAT once again is going to be a little difficult, since they have already announced that the passages will be similar to LSAT, all right, LNAT. So students, I would appreciate if you can just read as much as possible. And I'm going to share the daily targets for you so that you all be comfortable with the upcoming exam pattern. But before that, students, let's go ahead with the genre specific distribution starting from CLAT 2022 to 2026. So most of the weightage, around 24% weightage, was given to literature and short story. 24% weightage was given to literature fictions. All right, that means this is literature is dominant across all the years. Fiction 24% and non-fiction again 24%. All right. Sociology and psychology, only one passage was around there. Political science also only one. Philosophy also only one. So, and legal studies also one. international relation or geopolitical passage only once. So, and economics related passage was also asked only once. Environmental science related passage was also asked only once. And cultural criticism or media studies was also asked only once. That means these are the passages which are not so common, all right, but you have to be acquainted because even one passage around these genres come in your actual exam. So that is going to be a tough nut to crack if you don't actually practice for these kind of genres. So what is the target? That you should challenge your reading skills and try to get acquainted with almost all the genres and all the question types. All right. Now, student, let's go ahead with this. Indian history and Indian context related passages were asked for about 8%, and education related passages were also asked for about 8%. So that is the overall analysis of English section, genre specific analysis across all 5 years. Now, students, what should be the strategy like? As we know that literature is dominant, so divide literature into two parts. One is non-fiction, the other one is fiction. Try to get acquainted with both. If you're not comfortable with, say, novels, dramas, poems, etc., what you can do is start reading short stories. Read one short story every day. All right, that should be your daily target because it's going to give you or hone your visual skills, which is required for solving passages around fictions. Now, second task, so short stories work wonder. Why short stories? Because every time you will explore new theme, new setting. That's the reason that I keep suggesting my student to read one short story every day. Now, second thing is Indian context. Try to get acquainted with Indian history, Indian economy, Indian education system, Indian polity, everything around India. Editorials will also help you, students. I've seen 2 to 3 passages taken from the Hindu editorials. Okay. Now, third should be challenge your reading skills. What do you mean by that? Suppose if you're struggling with passages around philosophy, try to read philosophy more often. If you're struggling with economics, try to read economics related passages more often. All right, you can set a daily target like every day I'm going to read 2 articles around economics, 2 articles around philosophy, something like this. It will give you exposure towards vocabulary or terminology related to those genres. So that is going to be a good strategy for you, students. Challenge your reading skills, and every day you should read 7 to 10 articles if you are aspire to go for this CLAT 2027. All right, 7 to 10 articles every day. This should include your short story and editorials as well. So say one short story or and 3 to 4 editorials, then you have a scope of reading articles of different genre, like 3 articles from different genre at least. Now, student, let's go ahead with vocabulary. How to go about, because we have seen now which all question types were dominant. One was factual. I think that was frequently asked. Second was around vocabulary. Now, vocabulary is equally important, students, to fathom the passage as well as to attempt the question. So both ways vocabulary is important. So how to go about with vocabulary? You can follow some strategy and sources. So the first strategy is around words, etymology. You can buy a book named Vatpar Made Easy by Norman Lewis. Okay. Second is curate your own high frequency word list. High frequency word list and learn by. Second technique is words clustering. What do you mean by words clustering? You learn in groups, like all words related to hate together in one cluster, like hate, detest, abominate, abhor, loathe, despise. So, all related words in single cluster. What can be the source, students? Thesaurus.com. Now, third strategy with high frequency words. The your own curated list you can learn by mnemonics. The source of mnemonics is the mnemonicdictionary.com. So this is the source, mnemonicdictionary.com. I hope you got it, students. Mnemonicdictionary.com. So these are the three important ways, students. All right, three important techniques for learning vocabulary. Remember one thing, if you don't spend time with these techniques, on these techniques, that means you're not doing justice with your preparation because you will not be able to retain the words for a long period of time. So if you are struggling with retention of the words and meaning, please follow these techniques. They are going to work wonder for you. I've got separate sessions for these techniques. I have taught words by these techniques, so you can please watch those videos as well. All right, students. Now, grammar. As such, grammar is not that important, students, but still we should be doubly sure about the fact that we are 100% ready. So, grammar can be one of the component which can be tested via RC. All right, so grammar, one topic per week should suffice the need. Every week, you must take one topic and prepare for the same topic throughout the week. Spend just 15 to 20 minutes per day on grammar. All right. Now, after this, students, I would appreciate if you can solve PYP so that you actually know about your own preparations. And then, after this, students, you should write down mocks and you can have or solve the practice sheets for RCs. Practice sheets for RCs. And you can watch all the videos which are there on YT. We keep taking so many practice sessions. Then we keep taking strategy related sessions, like all strategies together regarding vocabulary, RC practice. All right, so you can watch those videos as well. So watch YT videos. Live sessions, recorded sessions on LegalEdge channel. Got it, students? So these can be some really good or effective techniques. So students, that's all for today. I hope you must have understood that what should you actually do, what all genres you should focus on, what all question types you should be practicing, what all possible question types are there which can be asked maybe once, twice, or thrice, but you have to be ready for each and everything. So that's all for today, students. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.